Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, hi, hello, welcome. I'm Sherrilyn and I'm so glad you found me. If you're not new here, welcome back to our True Crime Wine Wednesday. I realize for all the new folks, I don't really give a breakdown of what we do on this channel, but that's exactly what we do, is we drink wine on a Wednesday and talk about true crime. So if you like wine, true crime, or just like hanging out in general and talking about these cases, then come on in. Hit that subscribe button. We love ya. I, however, am on a wine hiatus at the moment. I should be able to have wine with you guys in about a month's time when I deliver a human, and I'm very much looking forward to it. Quick little life update before we get started. Let me just adjust myself. I feel like we've always got a life update lately, especially throughout this pregnancy. There's always something new. So on today's agenda, your girl's got COVID. Yeah. I don't know if you guys follow me on Instagram, but I had posted on there last week that I wasn't really feeling the greatest. I felt like it was a cold, and even when I talked to my doctor, a lot of it was just like pregnancy symptoms mixed with like a little bit of extra congestion for like a cold. And then a few days after that, I lost my taste and my smell, and I knew that was a pretty good indication of COVID. So I was like, awesome, perfect. And then sure enough, I tested positive. I know it's like really scary times right now, and everybody kind of wants to know what everybody's going through and how they've dealt with it and how they navigated. So I don't know when I'm going to have that ready for you, but I will do that. But not today. Today we're going to get right into the case. Before we do though, I want to thank today's sponsor, the Naughty Goat Soap. And I'm so excited about this because this is a family-run business, but also one of the key members of this family happens to be a member of our true crime family. So I was really honored and touched that she reached out to me to see if we wanted to do this collaboration together, and it was a no-brainer. I absolutely love any small business that I can support, and I know so many of you guys love that too. So the fact that it was also a member of our true crime community, I was like, yes, I want to participate. If you haven't heard of the Naughty Goat Soap, like I said, they're a family-run business that makes all natural soaps, colognes. They've got balms and shaving items, all made with fresh ingredients that they get from their goat farm in the heart of Wisconsin. And they also reach out to local suppliers too in their area and support that way also. I've had a chance to use several of their items, and I was absolutely blown away. I love a natural bar of soap specifically. There's just something about a natural bar of soap where it's just, like it's kind of got like those rigid edges. It just lathers different. It feels different on you. And I also love knowing that it's like organic and good for my family and myself. I'm not gonna lie, when I got a container of the cologne, I was skeptical because I had never used like fragrance, like any perfumes or colognes that were natural and came, from a goat farm. But the smell, it was one of the first smells I could smell, and I was like, oh my God, it was so good. Seriously, if you or your spouse is into putting like natural things on your body and you kind of miss having, that spray cologne smell, like you're not missing out at all if you have this. Brent's not really one of those guys who's into like the whole organic thing. He really couldn't be bothered. And even Brent was like, oh, what is that smell? And I was like, yeah, that's some cologne for you. So it was even big guy approved. They have so much more on their site too. I personally love the lavender and the clean cotton soap. It smells so fresh. So if you guys are wanting to check it out, or you know somebody who's into supporting small business and organic natural items, they have kindly provided a discount code for you guys. You just have to head over to their website at www.naughtygoatsoap.com and then enter Sherrilyn, all lower cases, at the checkout for 10% off. So thank you again to Naughty Goat Soap for making today's video possible. I appreciate you guys so much. Alrighty, we are going to dive into today's video. I want to thank my dear friend Carly for suggesting this case to me today. I had never heard of it before, and when I just did like a brief checkup on it, get the Cliff's Note version, I definitely used our catchphrase, what the is wrong with people, several times. And then as I got like really deep in and started researching, that just escalated. Today we are talking about a tree trimmer with an unusual obsession with trees and leaves, and how he went from dendrophile to murderer and used his obsession with trees to conceal his victims. The story starts in Mount Vernon, Ohio. It sounds like a very quaint historic town. Fun fact, it houses the oldest opera house in all of the United States. Reading that really made me miss like going to the theater and watching shows and the opera. Apparently its motto is one of Ohio's most likable communities. So for a 32-year-old mother named Tina Herman, I'm sure that element made her feel like it was a place comfortable for her to raise her 2 children. She had a 13-year-old daughter named Sarah and an 11-year-old son named Cody. Tina's described as a very hands-on mom. She's very dedicated. She was divorced from her children's father, so even as a single mom, she made sure that she could do everything she could to be active and present in all of her children's activities, even taking quite a bit of time off at her job at the local Dairy Queen so that she could make sure to be at all of their sporting events. In a nutshell, I mean, her life revolved around her kids. Even though she wasn't involved with her children's father, she was in a relationship in November 2011, but they had recently decided to split ways. And it was a little bit complicated because her live-in boyfriend, his name is Greg, at the time they were still cohabitating, but they were sleeping in separate areas. He was sleeping in the bedroom and she was sleeping on the couch. And it sounds like Tina and the children were really anxious to just get a fresh start going. Tina was wanting to find her own place for her and the kids. So the plan was on the morning of November 10th, 2011, that her and her best friend, 41-year-old Stephanie Sprang, were going to go and look at one house in particular that she had her eye on. And they were going to squeeze this in before she had to work at her shift at the Dairy Queen at 4 p.m. That morning seemed to start as usual. Greg said that every morning he was up for work and out the door by 3:45 a.m. He said he had spoken to Tina that morning and they had a little bit of an argument about who was going to take care of their dog that evening. Greg had told her that after work he was actually going to spend the night at a friend's house, and he doesn't know if she was upset because she had made other plans or was just wanting to have the freedom to like come and go from the house, but regardless, it caused some tension. After she spoke with Greg, she got the kids ready for school, and then around noon it seems that's when her and Stephanie got together and they went out to go and look at this house. I couldn't find any information as to if she actually made it to this appointment to see this home. Based on a later timeline that we're going to go through, I am assuming that she did. But then after that, when it comes time for her shift to start at the Dairy Queen, she's a no-show. And for Tina's situation, this is pretty unusual. It just so happens that she's quite close with her manager, who's a woman named Valerie, and she knows that Tina would never just not show up for a shift. And even if she had forgotten maybe about the shift and gotten distracted, when Valerie would call her to remind her like, hey, you work today, Tina would be like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Yes, I'm coming in. I completely forgot. So the fact that she kept calling her, there was no response back. She wasn't getting she had not received a call from Tina saying there was a reason why she wasn't coming. It was making her feel really uneasy. So that evening, when Tina is a no-show for the entire shift, Valerie and another coworker go to Tina's house to see if they can find her there. When they get there, the lights are on, her truck is in the driveway, but nobody is coming to the door. So they're like peeking around, trying to get in any unlocked door. Everything's locked up. And then her coworker mentions that it's really eerie that the family dog isn't barking. I guess they had one of those tiny little dogs who had, like a big bark and not a lot of bite. So any noise or any person, especially if somebody was like continually knocking on the door and going through the house and knocking on the windows and stuff, it would spark this dog to bark, and it was just silent in there. Their initial thoughts is they're naturally worried because they know that there's already tension in the house and they can't get a hold of Greg and he's not there. So they think something's happened between the two of them. So the ladies call the police, and since they're not family members, they don't have any legitimate reason to give permission for the police to just like barge in and like knock the doors down to go in the house. They do say that they will do several welfare checks throughout that evening though to see if she returns. fingerprints. The deputy that was assigned to do these checks, he actually said that he had just this hair-raising chill whenever he was going up to knock around and look around the houses. But again, he can't just go off of, I kind of got the chills looking around. So there's really nothing he can do but just keep coming back to see if something's changed. And it actually just so happens that on his last check of that evening, Tina's truck is no longer in the driveway. Again, it doesn't prove any foul play. It actually shows that there's a possibility maybe she was sleeping in there and didn't hear anything, and now she's gotten up and she's gone somewhere. So the next day, Tina is scheduled again at 4 p.m. at the Dairy Queen, and all of her coworkers, they're just sitting there waiting, praying that she's going to walk through the door and there's going to be a completely innocent misunderstanding. Maybe she just didn't remember that she was supposed to work yesterday. She had lost cell phone service. They don't know. They're clinging on to any hope whatsoever as to why she wasn't there the day before. But Tina doesn't show up the next day either. So her manager is like, you know what? I don't give I don't care if I'm breaking the law. I don't care if I'm invading her privacy. I'm going down to her house and I'm getting myself in that house no matter what. So she finds a window that actually happens to be unlocked, and she just pops the screen out and she's able to climb in. So she's hollering throughout the entire house. She's calling for Tina. She's calling for the kids. She's going through every single room and she's not getting any response. And then she arrives in the bathroom and she's absolutely horrified because it looks like the scene of a horror movie. She calls the police, and when they get there, they explain being just as shocked and taken back as she was. They say the amount of blood, particularly in the bathroom, was just overwhelming and that it looked like a slaughterhouse. As they're looking through the rest of the house, they do see blood in other areas of the house, like the hallway and the entryway, but it looks almost like drag marks, like everything was condensed eventually into the bathroom, and that whatever happened to one or all of these missing individuals, it happened in the bathroom. And they're not thinking anything positive at this point, because as they're combing through the bathroom, they're also finding tissue, which is giving them a pretty good indication that somebody or all of them have been dismembered. But they really have no idea. All they can go off of is the scene that they're left with, because nobody's in the house. There's no bodies, there's no other remains. It's just the aftermath of something that's happened. When they make their way to the garage, they see Tina's truck's not there, but Stephanie Sprang's Jeep is. It almost looks like she's parked in as if she's the owner of the house. So now Stephanie Sprang is officially also listed as a missing person. And when the authorities call the children's school, they find out that the kids did go to school on November 10th, 2011, on that first day that Tina missed her shift, but they were absent on November 11th, 2011, the day that Valerie and the police had gained access to the house. So first person they want to talk to is obviously Greg, Tina's ex-boyfriend, who had just had a little tiff on the phone with her. So he lets them know that he had spent the night at a friend's house, and that's what the argument with Tina was over on the night of the 10th after his shift at the Target warehouse. He also said that after work he went and played golf and made a few stops, I think picking up some fast food and stuff. So he had a pretty good trail, and police were able to see him on several different surveillance cameras, completely ruling him out as a suspect. Next, they go to the father of Tina's children, and he also has a rock-solid alibi. Not only that, but now he's an absolute disaster, in complete shock that he doesn't know where his children are. After the children's dad and Greg were ruled out, somebody called in a tip reporting that Stephanie's boyfriend was seen digging something in the backyard. So police rip over there, they check it out, and it actually turned out to be a dead rabbit. Again, they check out his alibi. Everything falls through with him again, so they keep going back and forth to square one. Then they catch their first break when they find Tina's truck located in a parking lot near Kenyon College campus, which is critical because there's so many scenarios now that they can rule out. Maybe whoever's responsible for this had stolen the vehicle and had all the 4 missing people with them. So they put the college on lockdown and they do a search of the vehicle, but unfortunately they don't find anything. There's no one in in the truck. There's no evidence. However, close by the truck, they see this dude just chilling in a Toyota Yaris. So the police go over and they let him know, like, hey, what are you doing? Like, we've got this whole place on lockdown right now. You're not really supposed to be here. And the guy in the car says that he's waiting for his girlfriend, Sarah, to get off from her shift at the Kenyon Inn. So they take down all of his information and then they just let him go about his business. Back at the house, there's some blood evidence that looks like it's a little bit promising for them. They're hoping now finally they've got something to work off of. And it's a shoe imprint that's in the garage and it looks like it belongs to a smaller female. And it just so happened when they were searching in the house, the box for that shoe was in Sarah's bedroom, who was Tina's 13-year-old daughter. So investigators take this as a good sign because they don't feel like she was responsible for what happened within the house. But the fact that she was able to leave an imprint means that she was able to stand. So she was alive and able to walk to the garage. It has been 3 days though, and obviously time is of the essence in these situations, but they're really hopeful. So they're focusing all of their efforts in this garage. While they're looking around, they find a few Walmart bags that still have the items in them, and they look like items you would normally find in a garage. So initially it didn't like pique anybody's interest, but when they looked through them, it had some tarps and some trash bags. So they're like, you know what, at this point we have nothing to lose. So they go on a hunt to find the Walmart that this came from because there's no receipt there. And finally they catch a break. Boom, first Walmart they hit. They look at the surveillance and it shows a man buying these items on the 10th, which is the night that Tina was reported missing. This guy didn't pay with a credit card or anything like that though, so they didn't have a name, but they did have a really clear picture. And I must say, when I saw the picture of the Walmart surveillance camera, I was like, that's a nice high quality camera you guys got there. And I really do suggest that other businesses out there, like, you invest in these types of things. Like, it's 2021 and there was just actually a jewelry store robbery here in our town, trying to make us sound all adorable. But the footage asking for the public's help, I was like, is this case from like 1992? Where'd you find this camera, guys? Like, it's completely useless. You can't identify anybody on it. But anyways, that doesn't apply here. Walmart clearly invested in that upgrade. So not only did they pull surveillance from within the store, but they also did in the parking lot too. And they see this guy walk out and drive away in a Toyota Yaris. Yeah. So they pull up everybody that's registered to a Toyota Yaris and they compared the photos of the license pictures to the picture that they have of the guy in the Walmart. And I swear you cannot make this stuff up, but Buddy's picture comes up and not only is he identical to the guy in the surveillance video, but they're wearing the same shirt. He's wearing the same shirt that he wore on the day he took the photo as the day that he went to the Walmart. And it's easily identifiable because it's army print. And not only that, but then when they look back on the notes when they located Tina's truck and saw this guy in a Yaris, the notes also describe this individual wearing an army shirt. Listen, I love army more than the average, but you can't overdo it. As they're going through those notes too, another coincidence comes up, and it's the fact that he says he's waiting for his girlfriend and her name is Sarah, which is the name of Tina's daughter, who police believe left her house alive. So now that they've located his driver's license, they find out that G.I. Joe here is actually a guy named Matthew Hoffman, and he's a local tree trimmer. Not too much is known about him. He was originally from Knox County. He was born on November 1st, 1980 to his father Robert, who was a firefighter, and his mother Patricia Hoffman. He was described as an odd teen. Neighbors specifically said that there was something off about him, but they didn't really know what it was, but they were going off of their dog's reaction. Because, you know, like dogs, they've got senses about these things. So their dog would always bark when he was around, and they said Matthew would just like stop and just stare at the dog and not blink, not break eye contact, nothing. And this was like every encounter that he had with their family dog. His friends described him as quite the daredevil. He liked to do dangerous stunts and like push the limits. Specifically, stunts that included him climbing really tall structures. There was one incident where he was caught climbing the roof of one of the local schools. He also liked to climb the roof of his own house and then jump off of it onto the trampoline below. And one thing specifically that his friend said he really loved to climb was trees. And not like little lame trees in your backyard and stuff like that, but like big trees, like 70 feet up. Like he would do it no fear. And he could just spend hours in there. This was just like his happy place. He even went and built a tree house in one of like the local wooded areas near his house, and he would just spend days there. So I feel like there's a time that we just kind of like don't climb trees anymore. Not that it's a bad thing. I mean, getting in touch with your inner child is always important. Anyways, his parents divorced 2 years before he graduates, and when he's 18 years old, he decides to make a move to Colorado. And he starts working in Steamboat Springs, and he's doing like maintenance work within this condo. But he's like the worst maintenance guy ever because he starts robbing the units. And then he gets paranoid because he feels like he's gonna get caught because he's either left like sweat or DNA or fingerprints. So he decides the best solution for this is to just douse the place in gasoline and just light it up. So he does over $2 million worth of damage to this place. He gets caught and he serves 8 years in jail. So after he's released, he moves to Ohio, and in 2007, he moves into a place in Mount Vernon. And here it appears he lands like his dream job. He becomes a tree trimmer, which is perfect for him because he still to this day has this deep passion and fascination with trees. His neighbors say when he moved in, he was relatively normal and friendly in their opinion. He even took it old school and like made a dessert and brought it over and introduced himself to his neighbors. I don't know about you guys, like, is this just a me thing, or would you have a really tough time accepting like baked goods from a new neighbor? Like, true story, you can even confirm this with my sister Mackenzie. Get in the comments right now. There was one time that I literally spat. Sorry. I threw out an order from Skip the Dishes because I didn't trust the driver's name. It was Bob, and I felt like that was such a made-up name, and it was probably just like this dude who was aspiring to be like the Skip the Dishes killer. So I didn't trust it, and I threw it out. Yeah. There's something wrong with me. That's not normal, right? But anyway, these neighbors are a little bit more trusting and they're cool with him. He actually even starts dating their mother's best friend. Initially, I think everything seemed to be okay. I believe they were even spending a lot of time at his house, if not living together there. But then on October 24th, 2011, she moves out and she alleges that they got in an altercation and he started choking her. So after that, clearly he's not coming by with any more pies. The neighbors that he used to be friendly with, they even warned their children, like, if you're outside and you see him come out, just come back into the house. And things just start to spiral for him throughout the next couple weeks. He ends up losing his job as a tree trimmer, and his behavior around anybody in the area, especially his neighbors, is just like pure rage and anger, they said all the time. They said he would also climb up in the trees in the neighborhood and he would just like cut the branches down and then just like watch them fall on the ground, and then like later on he would come down and he would pluck all of the leaves off and put them in grocery bags and take them with him. He'd also just sit in a hammock that he would put in these trees, and he would just sit there for hours. And they felt like he was listening in on their conversation, but they didn't have proof. I mean, he's not really committing a crime. He's just acting weird. And then they started seeing him setting like traps around the area, and he was catching squirrels and then just taking them back to his house with him. So on Sunday, November 14th, the SWAT team just busts through his house, and he's actually sleeping on the couch, and they like deploy this like smoke bomb, and they go in and they overtake him on the couch, and he wakes up and he's like, whoa, what's going on? And one of the SWAT members is like, you tell me, buddy. So they take him out of the house, and as they're searching through, they're feeling really uneasy because the entire house is full of leaves. And I'm not just talking about like leaves that have just like casually strolled in on a nice little fall breezy day. No, I'm talking like 3-foot pile of leaves in his living room. And they start thinking like, okay, is there bodies under these leaves? Is somebody hiding in here? Like, what the heck is going on? So they're making their way throughout the house. And I mean, it's eerie in there. Not only are there leaves on the ground, but there are hundreds and hundreds of bags that are stuffed with leaves, and they're like stapled to the wall, almost like insulation. I mean, just the bathroom alone apparently had over 100 bags in it. And they were stapled all the way up the wall, all up on the ceiling. It was like insulating around the toilet. It was just like this little like leaf bag cocoon. On top of that, there's also hundreds of doodles and writings on the wall. Like, it's everywhere. It looks like a schoolgirl's notebook. So by the kitchen, they make their way to this door that's blocked off by a cabinet. And when they move the cabinet, it actually is the door leading down to the basement. So they go down, and it's just, again, this creepy, eerie, leaf-filled, unfinished basement. And in this dark, dingy room in the corner of the basement, they find Sarah, and she's alive. She's tied up on this bed of leaves with these blankets that are like thrown on top of them to make like a leaf makeshift bed, which I never would have even thought about the fear element of the leaves being Sarah. And later on, she said that one of her biggest fears was that he was just waiting for an opportunity to set the room on fire, and that he was using leaves as an accelerant. And I was like, oh my God, when you think about it like that would have been such a traumatizing, horrifying 4 days for her. She said the reason she thinks she was kept alive was because she cooperated with everything he asked of her. She said he was really mean, but she always made sure to just stay calm. He also did warn her that if she attempted to escape, he would kill her, so she just stayed put. When police find her, she's starved. She said that there was one point where he did offer to give her cereal, and when he brought it down, the milk was completely rotten, so she didn't eat it. And he said the only other option that she had was to eat squirrel. The police actually found only popsicles and several dead squirrels in his freezer, so the reports from the neighbors that he would just like catch squirrels and stuff was because he was consuming them. While they're asking Sarah, questions in those early moments, trying to get information about her family, she's understandably out of sorts and seems quite disoriented. She says that she's late for school and needs to get there, and that she's worried that he's hurt her family dog. She later opens up to police, and she shares that she endured a lot in those 4 days. There were multiple sexual assaults on her, and she was just left in this freezing basement. But she said she just kept focusing on staying alive, cooperating with him, because he said if she cooperated that he would let her go home in time for Christmas. She also shares with them her version of the attack. She says that Matthew attacked her and her brother Cody when they arrived home from school. She says all that she remembers is that Cody was taken from behind, and she just booked it to her bedroom when she heard a struggle. She said from her bedroom she could only hear what was going on around her. She said she did hear her brother scream, but she was just frozen in fear and terrified that she was going to be killed. And then all of a sudden, there was just silence. She then says that he just comes barreling through her door, and he takes her and he brings her to the basement where there just happens to be some rope there, and he uses that to tie her up. She's not really sure how long it takes, but sometime after, he comes back and gets her, and then he walks her to her mom best friend Stephanie's Jeep that's in the garage, and he puts her in there and he covers her with a blanket. When they arrived at his house, she said that initially she was put in a couple closets. She was also in the bathroom, and then eventually she was brought down to the basement where he duct taped her hands and legs. But when it comes to her family, she has absolutely no information or any idea what happened to them. So when they bring Matthew in for questioning, that's their main focus. They need to find Tina, Stephanie, and Cody. But he is an absolute vault. He basically just sits there in complete silence for 5 hours. I say that like that's a long time, but I mean, if you're a woman out there who's like really upset with your spouse and you're into the silent treatment, like I could be silent for days. So that's what he's doing. He's giving them nothing. And then the only form of communication he does provide is like hours into them just like sitting awkwardly, not saying anything. And he makes this like fist gesture where he like pumps on his chest, and then he makes like a sign like his heart is broken, like goes like that. So the detective's like literally said, I don't speak sign language. Like, you need to talk to me. I know you can talk. What's going on here? He's like, is it your heart? No reply. He's like, is your heart broken? And then he gets a nod. And he's like, is your heart broken because of what you've done? And he gives like a nod, no. And he's like, is it because of somebody else? And then he's a vault again. So they're back to just sitting there in silence. And then there's another brief moment where now he does speak. And he says that he just found Sarah in his house like that. He doesn't think anybody put her there or is trying to frame him. He knows that he must have been the one responsible. And he knows that there must have been something terrible that went on if she was found in the condition that she was. After that, he just goes back to being Stonewall again, so they finish up for the day. The next day, he speaks to a different detective in hopes that somebody else can just kind of like move something in him and waken, his like inner confession. And he does speak with this woman, and he says that he's scared to know what he's done to deserve to be arrested. To me, it definitely seems like he's lining himself for an insanity defense. So he just keeps claiming that he has no recollection of what's gone on, but he knows that something's wrong with him, and he shares that he's already spent time in jail because he lit a condo on fire. And he says even though he knows there's something wrong with him, he never wanted to seek help or treatment because he wanted to, quote, hide the whole mental health thing. He said he didn't want to be labeled as having a mental illness. And he felt like when you address that you have any mental health issues, all they do is give you medication and it doesn't really address the problem. So he didn't even want to bother. Listen, I will agree with that. In some cases, I've actually had that be an experience of mine. And it was at one of my absolute lowest points. This was quite a few years ago. And I remember sitting in this room, this office with a doctor, with my mom, and she was not interested in hearing anything about why I was there. It was like, hey, what are the symptoms? What's been going on? It was a point where I was quite suicidal. So I was sharing that with her, and all she did was like basically send me out the door with like a birthday goodie bag full of narcotics. And I remember watching TV that night with my brother sitting on the couch with me and him looking over, being like, oh my gosh, what the heck is going on with you? And I was just like drooling, like I was completely out of it. You couldn't speak to me. I was like a zombie. So I fell asleep that night, which was clearly what the intent of this medication was, which is to like make you go to sleep all the time. But thank God, like I never took them again. I went back to my family doctor and we found out a new plan. So I won't disagree with his assumption that sometimes this is what happens, but I guess I've been fortunate enough to have people and professionals in my life who are willing to hear me out and like source out different options when something's not working for me. So after he shares this with that detective, again, he goes silent. So now we're going back on like the third day of him being in custody. And this next day, he's decided he wants to speak to detectives again. So he's making small talk with them. And it comes out that one of the reasons why he wanted to speak to them is that he had a really awful nightmare the night before where he was working at this like processing plant. And there was like garbage bags that were coming on the conveyor belt. And when he opened it up, it had like human remains in them. So this like jarred him enough to decide that he now wants to talk and share more with detectives, but he's got conditions. He said he wants to speak to the lead detective, but he wants to make sure that nothing is being recorded. So his way of going about that is during their conversation, when he's ready to talk, he tells him that he wants to go to the washroom and asks if he can escort him there. And so the police officer is like, yeah, okay, we can do this. When they get to the bathroom, he admits to the detective that he has killed Tina, Stephanie, and Cody, and that he's dismembered their bodies. And he's willing to show them where they are if they're willing to fulfill his requests. So basically his plan is that he's going to share with his lawyer almost like a map with directions of where they can find the remains. And this lawyer is going to hold on to that information. And then what him and the detective are going to do is come up with this plan where the detective is going to tell the other detectives that Matthew's willing to cooperate. He's going to bring us out to this site. And when they get to the site, Matthew's going to attempt to escape. And then he wants them to shoot him for trying to flee. So essentially he wants to kill himself, but he wants the detectives to do it, and he wants this guy on board with this like staged escape plan. Then he says once he's dead, they can now go to the lawyer who's going to have the information, and then the lawyer can give them the map and they can actually find the remains of the 3 individuals. And the detective's like, I don't think so, Tim. Sorry. I've been watching the new Tim Allen and Richard Karn's DIY challenge show. Anyways, so he turns down Matthew's request. He's like, sorry, like there's no way I can do this. So again, Matthew's like, all right, then the deal's off. Once again, it's like they keep taking a few steps forward and then they keep getting pushed back. But then Matthew comes back again and he's decided now he doesn't want to die. So now he will share where the bodies are if they take the death penalty off the table. So the detectives go to the remaining family members, they all agree, and Matthew makes a full confession. He says his intention was never to kill anybody, he just wanted to go and rob the house. He said the night before they went missing, which would have been November 9th, 2011, he went and staked out the house and slept in a sleeping bag across the street from it. And in the morning when everybody left, he went to the garage door that wasn't fully closed, so he was able to like push it up and gain entry into the house. So he said once he's in there, he's decided he doesn't really want to rob the place necessarily, but he wants to hang out there, and he got this like thrill of being in somebody else's house without them knowing it. I'm not going to go into extreme detail. You can find his confession online, but I'm going to give you like some excerpts from his confession and what happened once he was in the house. So he says, I was back in the bedrooms when Tina entered the house. I was unable to exit without breaking a window and trying to jump out. I had brought my knife with me for a certain amount of intimidation in case I ran into somebody and needed to make an escape. When she made her way to the back bedroom, I confronted her and made her get on the bed lying face down. I had a blackjack, and so my intention was just to knock her out, but it wasn't working. So I started panicking. The next thing I knew, her friend came into the bedroom. I have no idea when she got there, what she was doing there, or how she gained access, but she started yelling at me. Now there were 2 people that I had to deal with, and I didn't know what to do. He then explains at this point that he used the knife that he had brought on Tina, and Stephanie attempted to escape, and that he chased her down the hall and did the same to her. He said after he could tell that both women were dead. Then he says, at this time I was in total shock. I wandered around the house slowly coming to the realization of what I had done and how bad it was. At this point I decided I was going to dispose of the bodies and burn the house down. I decided instead to process the bodies and dispose of them inside of a tree that I knew was hollow. Once I had finished, I moved the Jeep to the garage to load up the bodies. I still had a couple of bags to load in the Jeep when I heard the children come to the house. I confronted the children, and the girl instantly ran to a bedroom. He then explains that he took the life of Cody the same way he did Cody's mom and her best friend Stephanie. After that, he said he ran to Sarah's bedroom, and he was expecting her to be on the phone calling authorities, but when he got there, she wasn't, and he couldn't bring himself to kill her. After he provides details of what happened within the house, he draws out a map for the detectives to find this 70-foot hollow tree for them to find their remains within it. He said he used this rigged up pulley system that he would use when he was a tree trimmer, and he attached the bags to, I guess, this device, and that's how he was able to get them up so high and then drop them inside of the tree. When the police get there, in order for them to retrieve the bodies, they actually have to make a hole in the side of the tree and then get them out that way. And when they cut the tree open, they do in fact find the remains of Tina, Stephanie, Cody, and the family dog. Matthew pleads guilty in January 2011, and he's sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, which is exactly where he needs to be. He has not shown any form of remorse whatsoever. He's never even apologized to Sarah. In fact, he told authorities that when she was with him, he was good to her because he would let her read the book Treasure Island, as well as played video games at one point and then watched Iron Man 1 and 2. This is something that Sarah denies happening though. She was always adamant from when the police first found her that he was never kind to her. And even though he says that this was all a random attack, investigators don't buy that. As they were piecing evidence together, they did find some receipts at Matthew's house that showed signs of premeditation. Several days earlier, he had bought these Sher grip gloves that appeared to be involved in these attacks, and that was purchased at a local Lowe's on November 4th. He also bought the duct tape and another pair of gloves on November 8th, as well as making an online purchase for this knife several days before these attacks. The only time he's ever showed emotion or any interest in really engaging with authorities is when he learned about how they retrieved the bodies, and the detectives told him what company they used to cut the tree open for them to get them out, and he kind of like perked up and he was like, oh yeah, like I know of that company. They're really good at what they do. Yeah, I'm sure they're just thrilled to have your positive review, Matthew. Unfortunately, the aftermath of what he has done did not end after his sentencing. The sheriff on the case, he just couldn't endure what he had seen and gone throughout this investigation, and he unfortunately ended up taking his life over it. I've read that Sarah is doing okay though. She's doing her best to live her life, to honor her brother and her mother by seeing the joy in every day and the fact that she's still here. It's just really heavy stuff in this one today, guys. I don't buy that he panicked and that this would have only been a one-time thing. I mean, aside from the fact that he clearly was planning something because he was buying all of these supplies leading up to the day. I just feel like it takes a certain person to dismember a body, let alone 3. And then once you find a way to conceal them that like is close to you and like hits home, I honestly feel like it would have made him a serial killer, and that eventually there would be a point where we would find like hundreds of bodies within this wooded area, all in trees. I do go back to that conversation that he had about not wanting to be labeled with having any form of mental health issues. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I'd rather be labeled as having some mental health issues than being a freaking murderer, but here we are. One thing I do believe needs to strongly happen though when inmates are released is that instead of only going to like a PO officer and just having to like check in and be like, hey, yeah, like this is what I'm doing now, I do think that there needs to be an element of mental health counseling. I know that there are some areas and facilities that do this. I don't know if it's like as much after, but like within the system, but it's not the norm. It's not something that happens all the time, and I feel like it should. I've always said before in other cases where if there's a chance for rehabilitation, I think that should be the number one priority. But even if this would be like a requirement in general for everybody being released, I mean, like you've done time in jail. There's obviously just, like something rooted inside there that we need to talk about. Doesn't necessarily have to have anything to do with the reason why you're there. But counseling is never a bad thing. I don't think it would help every single person out there, but even in an instant like this where it can change somebody's mind and they can release trauma or something that they've had bottled up inside of them for a long time, and it can prevent at least one life from being saved, or in this instance 3 lives from being saved, it'd be worth it. And I mean, that's tough because we don't have the resources for that. Things like that cost so much money, and that's just the reality of the situation. I mean, it's impossible sometimes for people who haven't spent any time in jail, who are just looking for help and somebody to listen to them, like how hard it is to get. So I know I'm just kind of bouncing off scenarios here that we have a lot of work to do. I want to know what you guys think though. I want to know if you truly believe that he panicked or if you think that he would have just like kept carrying on. All right, that is it for me today, you guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, please don't forget to like and subscribe. It means the world to me. I love and I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you again to the Naughty Goat Soap for making today's video possible. Please make sure you guys go and check out their website and give them some love. I will see you in the next video. Like I mentioned in the last one, we are on baby's time right now, so I don't know when that will be. I will miss you terribly. Until then, though, make sure to love each other, love yourself, and I will see you soon. Bye.